Here is something nobody tells you about being the responsible one in a family of chaos artists. It is not a role you apply for. It is a role that gets stapled to you sometime in childhood, usually around the age when you realize that if you don't handle something, it simply will not get handled, and then everybody suffers, and somehow that will also be your fault. You don't get a uniform. You don't get a salary. You get a reputation for being capable, which is just a pretty word for exploitable, and you carry it until the day you decide to put it down and walk away without looking back. I am 41 years old. My name is Kimberly, and last Tuesday I put it down. I should give you the full accounting because it matters. Not for sympathy. I am long past needing sympathy, but because the numbers tell a story that my feelings alone cannot fully capture. Over 12 years, I paid for my brother Eric's first failed business, then his second. I covered 3 separate emergency loans he took from people he described as investors, and who were in reality not patient men. I paid for my mother Brenda's knee surgery, which was real, and her follow-up treatment in Scottsdale, which I later discovered had a spa menu and a signature cocktail list. I co-signed an equipment lease that defaulted. I wired money on a Sunday morning because the request came in at 2 a.m., and something in the phrasing made me afraid of what would happen if I didn't. I have never added it all up precisely because I suspect the total would rearrange something permanent inside me. But Nicole, my accountant, once looked at my financial history with the expression of a woman watching a nature documentary about an animal walking calmly towards something that will eat it, and told me the number was not small. I lived in a 2-bedroom condo I had purchased 11 years ago and paid off in 9 through careful saving and absolutely zero vacations. I drove a sensible car. I ate lunch at my desk. I had a retirement account I watched with the devotion of someone who understood, at a cellular level, that nobody was coming to save me if I didn't save myself. This is the part where I'm supposed to say I didn't mind. I did mind. But minding felt ungrateful, felt selfish, felt like the kind of thing that would prompt my mother to remind me about everything she sacrificed. And so, I filed it somewhere quiet and kept going. The text arrived on a Wednesday. I was eating leftover rice at my kitchen counter, which is not a glamorous moment to have your life appended, but that's generally how it works. My mother sent it to a group thread that included me, my brother, and 2 cousins who appear in family communications only during crises and weddings. She wrote that she had made a very difficult decision and sold the family estate. The house I grew up in, the house I had contributed $40,000 toward the mortgage of over the years, in order to settle my brother's debts with a predatory lending company that had apparently been calling her landline for 6 weeks. She wrote that she and my brother and his girlfriend would be arriving at my apartment the following afternoon. Not could they please stay. Not would I be open to discussing options. Arriving like a weather system, like a foregone conclusion. I read it 3 times. The rice went cold. I need to be honest with you about the next 10 minutes because they were quieter than you might expect. There was no dramatic moment of rage. No table flipped. No call made in a shaking voice. I sat very still in my kitchen and felt something clarify inside me the way water clarifies when sediment finally settles all at once, almost peacefully. I thought about 12 years. I thought about the Sunday wire transfers. I thought about the spa in Scottsdale. I thought about my brother's face the last time I bailed him out, which was not grateful, but rather already calculating the next ask. And I thought about the email sitting in my inbox that I had been considering for 3 weeks. A developer named Clark had made an offer on my building, the whole complex, actually, but my unit specifically was one he wanted vacant quickly for a boutique conversion project. The offer was above market, meaningfully above market. I had been hesitating because leaving felt like instability, and I had built my entire adult identity around being the stable one. I picked up my phone, but not to call my mother. I need to tell you something, and I want to be direct about it. There is a version of this story where I called a therapist, booked a family mediation session, and had a difficult but productive conversation about boundaries. That version exists. I have imagined it many times. In it, I am patient and articulate, and everyone eventually understands their patterns, and we make real change together. I don't believe in that version anymore. I believe in the version where I opened the email from Clark's development company and typed 2 words back. I'm ready. If you have ever been the person your family calls instead of a professional, the person whose stability everyone borrows against without asking, the person who has been so reliable for so long that nobody even considers the possibility you might one day simply not be there, stay with me. I need you to see how this ends. Hit subscribe if you want the rest. Actually, you know what? I'm going to tell you right now. Stay exactly where you are. I called Nicole first because Nicole is the kind of accountant who is also, quietly, a crisis manager, and she did not ask any unnecessary questions when I told her I needed to understand the closing timeline on the developer's offer. She called back within an hour with a number that made my hands steady in a way they hadn't been in years. We could close in 5 days with a clean title. I had a clean title. I had always had a clean title. I called the developer's office next. I told them I was prepared to proceed and asked if the expedited timeline was still on the table. The man I spoke with, efficient, pleasantly surprised, confirmed it was. We would sign Thursday. I could have a check by the following Monday. Then I called a moving company. Not a full-service move, just labor and a truck for the next morning, and a quote for long-term storage for everything that wouldn't fit in a car. The woman I spoke with had a calm voice that I found deeply comforting in that particular moment. After that, I spent about 45 minutes on a rental listing website. I had always liked the idea of the coast. The specific coast didn't matter, just the sound of water that didn't ask anything of me, and a kitchen window that faced something other than a parking structure. I found a small cottage 3 states away available for a 12-month lease. I filled out the application with the particular focus of someone who has made a decision and is not stopping to reconsider it. The application was approved by 8 o'clock that evening. I did not sleep much that night, but not from anxiety. More from the strange, almost electric feeling of a plan unfolding on schedule. I made lists. I prioritized. I separated what was essential from what was sentimental from what was neither, and I was ruthless in a way that felt like finally using a muscle I'd had all along and simply never exercised. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I was packed. Not everything. Most of it would go into storage, but my documents, my laptop, my grandmother's reading lamp, the good kitchen knife, 3 changes of clothes, and the small framed photo of myself at 22 standing on a hiking trail somewhere I barely remembered, looking like a person who had not yet learned to be afraid of her own potential. The movers arrived at 8 o'clock. They were efficient and professional and asked me no questions about why I was doing this, which I appreciated more than I could say. By 11:30, the unit was cleared. It had taken less time to dismantle my life here than I would have imagined. Which was either depressing or clarifying, and I decided it was clarifying. I left the key in a lockbox I'd installed on the door handle, along with the paperwork clerk's office needed for access and inspection. I had already arranged for a sold sign to go up that afternoon through the development company's coordinator, who was cheerful about it in a way that made me want to shake her hand. I changed my phone number from the parking lot. My old number would be forwarded to a voicemail I had no intention of checking. The new number existed in exactly 4 contacts. Nicole, the moving company, my new landlord, and one friend from college named Emma, who had been quietly rooting for me to do something exactly like this for approximately 7 years. I texted Emma from the car. I did it, she replied in under a minute with nothing but a string of exclamation marks, which was sufficient. I was 3 hours down the highway when my family arrived at my former front door. I know this because the building had a camera system I still had app access to for another 48 hours, and I watched briefly, once, sitting in a gas station parking lot with a cup of terrible coffee, as my mother, my brother, and his girlfriend stood on the walkway looking at the lockbox and the sold sign, and then at each other. My mother tried the lockbox. Then she tried knocking, though I'm not sure what she expected. My brother got on his phone almost immediately, and I watched his mouth move in the practiced way of someone delivering an outraged monologue to voicemail. My new number did not ring. My old number collected messages I would never hear. I finished the coffee, which was genuinely awful, and pulled back onto the highway. Cottage is small, smaller than the condo. 1 bedroom, a kitchen with a window that faces the water, a back porch where the wind comes off the ocean in a way that makes it difficult to feel sorry for yourself about anything. I have been here 2 weeks now. I have met the woman who lives next door. A retired teacher named Pamela who grows herbs and has very strong opinions about local politics and zero interest in my family history, which I find refreshing. I have started cooking actual meals. I have slept through the night 8 days in a row, which is more consecutive good nights than I have had in probably 3 years. I have not spoken to my mother. I have not spoken to my brother. Nicole tells me they have retained someone to look into whether I had any legal obligation to house them, which I found both predictable and entertaining because I did not. A home I own is not a communal shelter. A life I built is not a safety net I'm required to offer to people who never once asked before taking. Here is what I don't know: whether my mother has found somewhere stable, whether my brother has figured out his situation, whether any of it worked out for them. I catch myself wondering sometimes, late at night when the ocean is loud and the cottage is quiet, what the story looks like from their side. I imagine it involves a great deal of describing me as selfish, which is a word my family has always used to mean inconvenient. I don't know if I'll ever speak to them again. That is the honest answer. The future is not a story I've already written, and I have learned, somewhat late, to stop writing stories that require me to disappear inside them. What I do know is this: the window faces the water. The mornings are quiet. The coffee I make here is better than anything I had in that parking lot. And for the first time in 12 years, the only person I am responsible for is standing in my kitchen right now, watching the light come off the ocean, and thinking, slowly, carefully, with no one looking over her shoulder, about what she wants to do next. New stories every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this one found you at the right moment, type yes in the comment.